Thank you so much for coming out today. It's wonderful to have you here for our presentation with Zane Foraker on the energy savings in Knox County Schools. I'm going to do a few little introductions and then we'll go ahead and get started here. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today. At the silver level, we have Ecological Energy Systems, Green Spaces, Partners Development and Training. And at bronze level, we have Benefit Directors Design Build Company, Blaine Construction, Brewer Acre Floor Architects, Elizabeth Easton Architecture, Facility Systems Consultants, Hickory Construction, Johnson & Gallion Construction Incorporated, Knoxville Community Development Corporation, Marvin Concepts, McCarty Full-Staff McCarty Architects, View Handling Group, Oak Ridge Associated Universities, S&M Sales and Marketing Consultants, and Shaw Contract Group. This is Linda, she's my daughter, I brought her today. She's also our door prize. There'll be a question at the end. Whoever has their hand up first and answers the question right or wrong should take her home. We have a few upcoming events. On September 25th, next Wednesday, in Chattanooga, we have Energy Modernization. On October 18th, here in Knoxville, at Calhoun's, I believe, we'll have Stormwater Strategies. On October 26th, we're going to have Weatherization Day. And on the front table, we have a little flyer about Weatherization Day. It's going to be in partnership with an organization called SEED. And Bruce Glanville, who's in the audience here, Bruce, is going to be our urge rater. So I cannot thank him enough for making this event possible. After that, on November 15th, we have Fenestration and Daylighting with Ken Shin. It's going to be again at Calhoun's. And last but not least, we are seeking speakers right now for our 2014 education series. So if you are interested or if you know anyone that might be interested in giving a professional presentation on sustainability or green building topics, please get in contact with me or someone else with the chapter. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Zane Foraker, our speaker for today. He is an energy manager with Knox County Schools. He is responsible for developing and running an energy management program to reduce utility costs for a 9.5 million square foot school system with 88 ranked facilities and current annual utility bills of over 16 million, but declining. He's also responsible for developing and implementing a computerized scheduling system to allow KCS to rent facilities to various community groups. He also has experience conducting and managing energy audits on large commercial projects. Education-wise, he has an MBA from Tennessee Technological University and a BS in Engineering Science, Computational Mechanics from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. So without further ado, thank you, Zane.
Thank you very much. It's a small room. I'll stand here at the microphone, but I think you can hear me regardless. It's nice to see some new faces. You always worry when you come to an event like this, you're going to be talking to the same people and just giving them an update. I am going to ask you to do something in your mind to prepare for this presentation. This is very similar to a presentation that I did for the Tennessee School Board Association. You know, board members, superintendents, that level of executive people in the decision-making process. So although we have a lot of architects, engineers, staff like that in the room, this is the kind of presentation that's being presented to board members. This is what they're being told to look for from you when you come to them with designs for schools and things like that. So understand that they're being educated in this fashion, and that might help you to prepare your pitch to a certain extent. Who am I? We went over this a little bit. He got my bio from a presentation I did back in 2010 or 11 at the USGBC, and that's where the $16 million in utility costs came from. I'm happy to say they have come down. We're at just around $14 million in utility costs right now, so that's a very positive trend. I am an East Tennessee native, grew up here, was educated here with the University of Tennessee here in Knoxville, so I am familiar with the problems and the things that we can do here in East Tennessee and where we've made progress and where we need to. I am actually the chair of the USGBC East Tennessee right now. So many of you that are members may or may not have known that, but I am your current chair at least up until the new elections take place very soon in December. So we are always looking for board members. So if you have any desire to serve on the board, please come to us, communicate with us, let us know. There's some good opportunities available. Knox County Schools started their energy management program back in 2007, and the reasons were very straightforward. They decided that they were going to start a performance contract, and they selected a train company to do an energy-saving performance contract. That people asked, well, what are you doing right now to save energy, to save money? And the answer, quite frankly, was really nothing. We're not doing anything internally. And they realized, well, that's not politically popular. We have to start a program. So they hired me to start the energy management program. And I am a Knox County School employee. What you'll find as you go around the state, that a lot of energy managers for counties or people that call themselves energy managers are not necessarily direct school employees. Now, there are pluses and minuses to both of those. My personal thought, and I've shared this throughout the presentation, is that it is important to have a school employee in that role. You have more of an ownership, you have more of a bias toward helping the school system and less toward helping your contractor in that case. So I'm very pleased to say that Knox County and Hamilton County, in Tennessee in particular, have hired full-time energy managers, where some counties are doing this on a contracted basis. I have 2 employees that work for me, 2 direct reports. Both are, we call them energy educators. That is a small fraction of what they do. We have, over 80 schools in Knox County. We have over 9.5 million square foot of space, nearly 10 million now. So it is a big amount of space to manage. You need more people, more eyes and ears. So I have one person, one of my energy educators, that runs the control systems, actually does the building level monitoring of the controls, seeing if things are running properly, but we do have good controls. And then I have another one, that's my in-school guy, that I use him to communicate with principals, teachers, to be in there and cajoling them and trying to get them to do some of the things that we have to do to save energy. Knox County Schools has separate maintenance and facilities departments. Now this may seem like getting into the weeds, but it's actually turned out to be a big deal. Where does the employee that's the energy manager in the school system work in that organization? Well, I work for the maintenance department. And that also has some pluses and minuses. The pluses is that means that I work directly with the men that actually do the maintenance in the schools. I can put in work orders directly and know that they're getting followed up on if I see broken equipment and things like that. However, in Knox County, maintenance does not build new schools. Facilities department builds new schools. And for a number of years, I was not involved in the basic design and construction of the new buildings in the way I should have been, or the way that I would have been if the departments were combined. So that's something that we need to be on the lookout for in other systems. How is their maintenance and facilities department structured? Is it one or is it separate? Down to the meat of the presentation, what it really comes down to is, are you saving energy? All the energy digits that I'm going to show you right now, all the numbers are kBTU per square foot. So that's 1,000 BTUs per square foot. That's the energy use intensity. And 2007 was our baseline year. You can see in 2007, before we started anything, we were at 65.8 for the system. We've seen savings every year since then through doing some of the things we'll be talking about. This is not unique to schools. If you start an energy management department in any organization, you're going to see savings because things are not inherently efficient yet. Down to 45.4% in 2012, and that's good progress. That's outstanding progress in a short period of time. That's 31% lower in that 5-year period. Well, our FY 2013 just ended. So, we're making this great progress. What happens in FY 2013, well, yay, they got down to 45.3, a whole tenth. Now, you look at that and you wonder, now, are we leveling off? I'm working just as hard. People that are working for me are working just as hard. My performance contractor is spending $30 million right now on additional improvements. Why aren't we seeing those savings? And a lot of you probably have that intuitive feel of what happened back in 2012. Notice we had that big decline from 52.6 down to 45.4 in 1 year. Well, I'm going to start showing, to begin with, my savings like this, so that I don't show that little 110, 65.5 to 45.3. But the realization is weather happens, and something that can't be ignored, even when it happens in your favor. And that's something that we need to take account of when we're building buildings, when we're doing commissioning on buildings, when we're building owners. Is weather normalization necessary? Well, in the long term, it is. It's only necessary when you have a problem like I just had. When you show a tiny bit of savings that's only or a negative, if you show an increase in consumption, if it's weather related, there's nothing you can do about that. It's fine, but you have to be able to document that. What I'm showing you on this screen is a lot of numbers, but basically this is how I do a poor man's weather normalization. On the left is the baseline weather in terms of degree days for Knoxville, Tennessee, Knox County, based on the TMY2, which is a 30-year moving average of data. And then we have our baseline year, which is FY 2007. What I've done is I've added up all the total degree days, And that gives me a rough approximation of how severe weather was, both cold and hot, how unmild it was in terms of the weather. And if you look, I've given a percentage to these years, 2007 and then the last 3 years. 2007 was 98%, very close to the long-term average. This year was exactly the same, 98%, very close to the long-term average. So the weather was normal. However, in 2011, we had 105%. So a 5% more extreme departure from the weather. Well, extreme weather is going to cost us energy, it's going to cost us dollars, both in the summer and the winter. This past year, 88%. That means it was much more mild, very mild compared to the long-term average. Well, the problem is when you go from a year that's more extreme to a year that's more mild, your savings are exaggerated. And that's what we had in Knox County Schools last year. That's what a lot of schools in the region and state of Tennessee were showing. Everybody was successful last year. Everybody was smiling. I bet there aren't very many smiles this year unless you go back and you look at the weather and you normalize some of this. All right, moving out of the basics into some school design implications. This is what we tell board members. New construction, you have to do it during the design phase. You know, do not build your schools and think you're going to come back later and make them energy efficient. It can be done, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you a lot of money on new equipment that's not necessarily needed. And more importantly, it's going to cost you a lot of time. And you're going to be spending a lot of money during that period of time. Schools call their designs program standards. Most school systems in Tennessee do this. We don't have standards, statewide program standards like the state of Kentucky does. Each individual school district can set their own program standards. So you can't make a design for a school and then sell it from one system to another and know that it's going to be accepted, because some systems are looking for very different things. In Knox County, a lot of people talk about how expensive our schools are to build compared to schools in some of the neighboring counties. And the response that you normally get is that we build nicer schools. Now, part of that nicer is, in fact, things like wider hallways. Do we need wider hallways? Well, Knox County thinks so. But wider hallways don't enhance the education of the school. They simply make it easier for the children to walk around. That's something that in Knox County is more important than it is in Claiborne County or Union County and some of the other counties where they're more focused on the cost of those schools. What you need to do is set an energy target when you start school construction. And once again, this is what we're telling the board members and superintendents statewide. Don't guess of what your school is going to be, how much energy it's going to use. Set that target before you go to the developer, before you go to the architect and the engineer, and you tell them that you have to meet this target. And then what that target is not what you want it to be right now. We all know what our capabilities are right now with the stuff, with the equipment that we have. You want to set your target with what that school needs to be in 10 years. And this is an example of why that graph that you see with all the vertical lines back in 2007 when I started this energy management program, that is the EUI, the energy intensity of each one of our elementary schools. And you can see how widely they're distributed, you know, from all the way over 100 down to over 40. Well, if you were setting a target using that data, you know, where would you want to set your target? Well, you wouldn't necessarily set it all the way at the bottom. You know, it's hard to get people to agree to the most efficient school. They think that's more cost, even though it's not, as we'll talk about a little bit later. So you're probably going to, you know, just come in here somewhere, just visually, and set your target. 50 kBTUs, 55 kBTUs per square foot. Well, you know, in 6 years now, that is those same schools, EUI. You know, look at how that has shifted, how that has moved down. If we had built our brand new school back in 2007 with that 50 to 55 kBTU target, all of a sudden it's one of the most expensive schools we have and not one of the most efficient schools we have. So you have to be aggressive with that EUI target from the school side. And remember, this is talking to the board and to the executives. One of the things, as an aside, many of you are aware that we built Hardin Valley Academy back in 2006, 2007 timeframe. And it was built as a very efficient school. It's the first school in Knox County that had water source, ground loop geothermal heating and cooling. Unfortunately, they only built that with geothermal loop on the offices and the classroom side. And they decided that they would go to TVA and get an all-electric school designation. So for all the common areas, the gymnasiums, the library, the cafeteria, all the big volume areas, they have traditional equipment, DX cooling with electric heat, because they didn't want to put in smaller units to get heat pumps. So DX cooling with electric heat. 5 or 6 years later, what is the least efficient high school in Knox County right now? Hardin Valley Academy. That's something nobody would expect and something we're certainly not proud of. We're going to try to do some retro commissioning and get some of that back, but you can't fight basic equipment when it's poorly done in the first place in a lot of cases. A school, if you're going to put it on a geothermal loop, the entire school needs to be on that geothermal loop. That's where you get the efficiency of that loop, by taking from the areas that have the heat and putting it in areas that need it. Another example, this is another school that was built roughly the same time period, and if you look sideways, you can tell what it was. I try to tell people, we try not to shame, but in some cases, there's shame enough to go around in all directions. Gibbs Elementary was built, and it's a good school, very modern design and working well. However, once again, you build a new school, you think it's going to be the most efficient one in the system, right? You're putting new stuff in, all the controls are new, it's efficient, got the latest technologies. This is what the EUI looked like for Gibbs Elementary for the first 6 years. When it was built, 57.9 during that first year period. That's our baseline period. So the next year, after we've been here for 6 months to a year, it comes in at 57.8. Now we look at that and we say, well, that's probably the load of the school. That's reasonable, but then the next year comes and it occurs to us, that's too much for a new school. That's ridiculous. We need to look at what's going on. So you go there, don't spend a dime on new equipment, new lights, or anything. Just look at the commissioning that was not done. And you can save from 57.8 down to 44.8. And then with continuous commissioning, continuing to look at school, tightening schedules down, getting thermostats calibrated correctly and get them working, that's how you get the savings down to 29.3 like it was last year. Also had an extremely good weather year. You notice I didn't put 2013 up there. I slid up a hair. But no equipment or lighting changes were made in the school. We didn't spend $1 except for time on this school and got a reduction of nearly half in terms of the energy intensity of a brand new school. That's something that opens a lot of eyes when we give this presentation to school board members in Nashville and places like that. They understand that they can make big mistakes if they don't look at the commissioning of the school. The first 3 years is what we look at as the telltale sign. What is that average over the first 3 years? That's what I told Knox County, the development board, when we started building Carter Elementary, is that our EUI target needs to be the average of the first 3 years, because you don't want the designer, the developer, the engineer, the architect to meet that EUI target on year 1, when in some cases you only have 1 grade level of the school in terms of the high school. You want that school fully occupied. You want the teachers to bring in their lights, to bring in their dehumidifiers, to bring in all their plug loads, and make sure that you take account for all of that in the initial design. So the first 3 years there, we had an average, it was over 50. What is the right EUI target? We can set it anywhere we want. Ideally, we want to set it as low as we can afford. Schools are built to be around for a long time. People don't understand how long you're going to keep a school. We have plenty of schools that are 80 years old that are still occupied in Knox County. A lot of other systems do as well. You don't look at a school like you do other commercial buildings to have a 30, 40, or even 50-year time frame, because people get emotionally attached to them. It is tough for us to tear down a building even after we move out of it, or to turn it over to the county for further development or anything like that. So you have to start out with the lowest you can afford. And it's hard to see, but that actually says that 18 to 20 kBT per square foot is what the target would be for a net zero energy school. If you could get down to 18 to 20 kBTUs per square foot, then you're going to be in a situation where you could add solar panels like you see in the background there to the school, and it would pay, or it would furnish all the energy you would need to come to net zero energy. Now, most people are not going to do net zero energy because solar panels are not free, and unless you get a big grant at the start of the project like we did here in Warren County up in Kentucky where this is shown, you don't get to get that added benefit of generation of electricity for free. However, if you get close to 20 kBTUs per square foot when you're setting your target, then you have that opportunity. Sometimes things fall in our lap. The state of Tennessee have grants. The Energy Efficient Schools Initiative has money that's willing to dole out to schools every single year with new programs to allow us to put things in schools. So if you get close to that target, if you set the school close to 20, then you have the opportunity to someday have a school that has a negative utility bill. And that's what you see at places like Warren County. And the key thing is cost. Obviously, you're going to get pushed back when you go to boards, when you go to taxpayers about the cost. And if you go down to 18 to 20, there are specific things you have to do that are much more costly. You have to change the design in ways that add cost. But if you're talking 25 kBTUs per square foot, which is more efficient than any school we have in Knox County right now, you can build that school for the same cost as you can build a 40 kBTU per square foot school. We've set our target in Knox County at 35 kBTUs per square foot because we set it 2 years ago when we started the Carter and the North Shore design. If we had waited, right now we'd set it at 25 because it's capable, it's doable, and it doesn't cost a dime more than building a school at 40. It just causes us to look at the design through the eyes of efficiency and saying, maybe we need to shave our hallways by 6 or 8 inches instead of having it 6 or 8 inches bigger to get down that 1 extra half kBTU or something like that. But it can be done. And that saves money. Anytime you reduce the size of a common area to a certain extent, you're going to save money on the overall building materials. So congratulations. I tell them, your new schools now are going to be designed perfectly. You're going to have a 25 kBTU for square foot school. Everybody's going to be happy. Their taxpayers are happy. Well, someone's going to ask the question when they see the utility bills, the budget is still increasing. Things are still going to cost more. Why is that? The school system as a whole. Well, I got 80 schools. There they are. We just saved a lot of money on this one that we built right here, this brand new school. But we have all of these that we still have to operate. So what are we going to do to operate those schools to get some savings? And that's what we're going to go into the second half of this presentation. And the first thing is, can you really improve existing buildings? Well, my answer is yes, obviously, but how do principals and people in schools view that when you talk to them about how high their energy costs are in the school? Well, this is what you hear. This building is old, the equipment is inefficient, and there's nothing we can do to save energy. There's leaks everywhere. That's what you have to work around. That's the first thing you're going to hear in every county in the state of Tennessee, probably every county in the nation. It's not true. And this is, finding the proof that it's not true and then being able to show that to people is the key. And this is what we tried to do that. And unfortunately, with our poor open source PowerPoint, you can't see this slide. But picture a scatter plot with one color of blue and the other color of red. The scatter plot shows that from 2007, or from school construction, from 1900 up through 2013, there is no trend line that shows efficiency increasing. It is very slight. It is maybe 3%, the trend line, all the way across the board. The implication is we have schools that were built in 1936 right now that are the third and fourth most efficient schools we have in Knox County. And we have the schools that were built recently, the Hardin Valley Academies, that are back in the 70s, back in the 60th and 70th most efficient school. It does not matter when the school was built. How it matters is how you operate the school. You can operate window air conditioners and get the savings out of them that you can't get from water source heat pumps and ground loops if they're controlled improperly. The fastest, most inexpensive improvement is basic staff training. And that's what I do every year. My staff and I go through, and you actually get people, and you get in front of them, and you present, and you train them. And it's because people have not been told, in the vast majority of situations, what they can need to do to save energy. You would think they would realize it. We all pay our own electric bill at the house. You know what costs you more energy. That's what we tell them. The thing they learn here are things that they can take back home with them, and they pay attention a little bit more because of that. This is an example training slide that shows the EUI intensity, and I just walked through with them what is EUI, what is kBTU per square foot, and then show them at their school what it's done for the last 2 or 3 years. And we talk about cost as well, but I always tell people, and this is very important, and it's very important for boards and superintendents to understand, you can't look at the cost. The cost has too many factors attributed to utility rate increases that we can't control. The only thing the schools control, the only thing that we can control internally is the amount of energy you use. If you use less energy, you are going to save money, period. So don't look at the total cost when you're talking about the designs. Look at the energy intensity instead. This is another example slide where we show total cost for the school just to give them an idea. Is it going up or going down? And with my subtle manipulative colorology there, I have the red arrow showing them that it's going in the wrong direction. And then the blue arrow showing that their energy use, green, is in fact coming down. So this is an example. You're doing the right thing at this school. Your energy use has gone from 44.1 down to 42.1. So you were third out of 48 schools, and now you're second out of 47. So we rank the schools. We tell them what their rankings are. Some schools enjoy the idea of trying to become better because they want to increase their rank. You know, principals are people too, and they have egos just like everybody else, and they want to look like they're doing a good job, particularly at the high school level. You know, they want a winning football team, and they want a winning energy team as well, and it's something that you don't think about until you get into it. But that's one way you can manipulate them, for lack of a better word. Annual staff training, this is just an example of where you would get together. You have a picture of the lights off in the room. Good habits are not immediately adopted. That's why you have to do this every year. Yes, you do, at least for a while. We did this the first 4 years of this program, and then we skipped a year, and then we did it this past year as well. During that skipped year, people forgot things. The habits decreased. Doors were being left open again, things that we had nailed down and gotten across. So 4 out of the 6 years so far we've done staff training. It's important to hit the new people in schools though. You know, you can run into a brick wall if you're talking to the same people and telling them the same thing year after year after year. So I go to new teacher training, I go to new administrator training, new custodian training, and tell them particularly what is in our policies and procedures and what needs to be addressed. I'm quickly through that because I can't read that any better than you can. It's been a while since I give this presentation. These are some of the tips that we tell them. We hand out these tips. We actually give them something physical that they put in their rooms. We make the principals put them on bulletin boards. We make them address the fact that these happen in your school and they shouldn't happen. We had to get agreement from information technology, from the IT people for certain one of these things. IT, for some reason, likes their equipment on all the time and running. Well, what happens when you leave things on all the time and running? It fails faster. It heats up. Heat is what leads to failure, not being off. So when things are on all the time, they actually fail faster. We had the agreement finally that we can turn Apple computers off every night, but they still want the Windows computers only turned off on weekends. Well, you know, it's small baby steps to a certain extent. Energy is like a quality program. It's ISO 9000, it's continuous improvement. You try to do things every year to make progress rather than come in with a chopping block and tell them what they need to do in year one. Keeping doors closed. Simple things like that from the outside. As sad as it is, episodes like Sandy Hook can emphasize some of our energy goals as well. You need to keep your doors closed, people. You don't want people coming in any more than you want heated air coming in the summer. So that has helped us quite a bit. And now we have a new security staff here in Knox County, and they are focusing on the goals that the energy department set because they realize that those are things that are already in place, already board-approved policy that they don't have to reinvent. After training, we're going to be heading more toward an inspection and a deficiency program. This is what we're going to be doing this year. We're not going to every school and doing a full staff training. We're going to look for whether people are following the right habits, and we're going to be focusing the much needed remedial training in the schools where they don't follow the habits. And that happens because, in many cases, you have a principal that's not emphasizing that. The leader of a school is the single most important thing in knowing whether they're going to be efficient. In any building, if you're on Oak Ridge, you know, like we were talking about before, the leader of that building, the person in charge of the energy use, in charge of that building, sets the tone. It's the same way in schools. Employees know what's expected. We've talked about this for 6 years now. The deficiencies will be presented to the principal for correction. You know, they're obvious deficiencies. These are things that are straightforward enough that we can all see. Windows left open right above stairwells. Somebody that's come in and cardboarded up their diffuser. Chairs in front of return grills. Things that you talk about time and time again. Doors propped open with books. You know, our carpentry shop hates this worse than I do. There's nothing will tear a hinge off faster than that. And then this is something the community sees. Doors, they're just left open outside of the school. You know, how safe are my kids when I see something like that? And then from our perspective, how much energy are you wasting by just having the convenience of having that door? Is the principal the real problem? The key thing is the system needs an enforceable energy management procedure and energy policy. We have an energy policy and procedure right now in Knox County Schools. We've had one for the last 4.5, almost 5 years. Whether it's enforceable is up for debate. I do not enforce it. I cannot enforce it. The principal can enforce it. The superintendent can enforce it. So it is enforced in some places but not others, which is obviously a bad thing. If you enforce the rules for your children in some places but not others, well, your children soon stop following the rules. And the same thing happens with teachers, because we move people around from school to school. They don't stay in the same school a lot. They'll move from school to school, and if rules aren't enforced in one spot, they gradually get lax everywhere. Some more methods to reduce energy costs. Just basically, if your utility bills for your system or for your organization are more than $2 million total, it pays to have somebody in my type of position to watch for utility bills. It'll pay for itself. $2 million is kind of the limit that TVA has agreed to, with discussions with energy users, as that kind of limit, that you have to be above that. Now, that means for a county, if the school system only had $1 million of energy costs, and then the county had $1 million of energy costs, you could have a person that watches both. That you can combine counties. You can do a lot of creative things. We're far more than $2 million though, but even then, at the start of my job, my boss told me, everything is political in this world. You're going to have to justify yourself and protect yourself. So this is what I do to protect myself. Every time my department finds an energy savings of something that's quantifiable, we put it in a spreadsheet and we keep track of it. And as you can see, annual recurring savings, those are the ones that are more important, because that means every year, we're not spending $405,000 on things that we discovered. The things that most people look at are the one-time savings, because in those, we're either getting a check cut back to us or a credit on a bill. So that's very popular, in the office, but when it comes down to it, the annual savings are more important. But in Knox County, nearly, 400,000 or over 400,000 annual savings and $250,000 in rebates since 2007 when we started this program. And that's from water leaks, unnecessary meters that we just had sitting there incurring meter charges that weren't being used. Demand response program revenue. We'll talk about Internoc in just a second. This is something that I saw when I first put together my graphs. And this is Bearden High School natural gas. And what you see there is every year since our baseline year, we've done really good on gas consumption, right? We really reduced, well, no, we didn't change anything in Bearden High School to reduce gas consumption. That is a utility problem that occurred back in 2007 that went undetected. That's $150,000 worth of natural gas that we paid for that we didn't use. It can't have been a leak. Somebody would have smelled that. That's the amount of gas that you notice. That's the kind of gas that blows things up. So that's something that should have been detected. But if you're not looking at the bills, if you're not actually auditing the bills for intelligently, not just looking to see that you're paying what's on there, but that it's reasonable, that's the kind of thing that goes by. $30,000 in wastewater that we did catch in rebate. This one was kind of hard to catch, but fortunately it was the second year that it went up. But when it continues on so long, that starts to look like the new normal. But we suddenly realize it's not the new normal. Something's wrong, so you go out to the site. Now you would think you would see a water leak. You would think that it would show up when the line is leaking directly into the storm drain with no intervening pool or puddle of water. That's never going to get caught. We found it by listening. Actually going out, being quiet, and walking around our ears until we heard running water, and it was going directly into the storm drain. Now water, gas, let's hit our other utility, electricity. You're looking at the bills. Lincoln Park, you're familiar with electrical demand. We'll read from bottom to top: 80, 83, 91, 56, 454, 33. What? 454 kW at a school that peaks at less than 100 kW, that probably has a maximum electrical capacity of 150 kW and it's switchgear. Well, you just contact your utility at that point. You ask for an investigation, and certainly enough, somebody back here, they just got it wrong. They misread it. It was 40.2 kW. Well, if you weren't looking at the bills, that would have been paid. That would have been missed. We got a credit for $5,700 on that bill that came back to Knox County Schools because of that. But that's the top tip of the iceberg. We are talking about electrical demand because you have ratchets that kick in, where your KW can be charged to you based on a percentage of your highest KW over the past year. So that saved us an additional $23,000 that we would have paid for the rest of that year just because of that one billing error. That's the annual savings that get overlooked sometimes. Demand response is something we do at TVA through the Interknock program. That's when they call us when TVA gets close to the point where they don't want to buy electricity on the spot market and ask us to reduce the electrical use and demand. It's a free program. Anybody with a large enough KW demand can sign up for this. They've set their level at about 250 kW is what your peak needs to be, but they'll let you slide under that a little bit. And you need to be able to reduce, 50, 100 kW. Once again, you can actually sign up for a little less, but it's a free program to participate in. The beauty is they actually put the device, they install the power monitor in your building for free, and they hook it up on a web-based system that you can look at it on the internet. And this is an example of that. And it keeps the data for as long as you can imagine, up to more than a year, really. But it shows every day, up to the 5-minute intervals, what your electricity use was in that building. Well, that's great if you're actually tracking down problems for what is coming on, what is causing me to set these weird peaks. And this is something that you would normally have to do yourself. You would have to spend the money and go in and do this for yourself. Interknock will do it for free. TVA pays them to do that for free. The response is voluntary. If they call you and ask you to respond like you promised you would, and you don't pay anything. There's no negative to it. Now, if you don't respond the first 15 times that they ask, eventually they're going to say, all right, you're no longer a participant in this program, but it doesn't pay for them to come out and take that device off the wall. They leave what they've installed. So, I'm not telling you to cheat TVA or cheat Interknock, but please take advantage of this if you have buildings that use enough electricity to qualify for this program. In schools, it works particularly well because in the summer, when do we have demand response events? In the cooling season. Well, you have them in the early afternoon, right around 2 o'clock. And I get an event from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, where our schools are getting out at 3. What I do is I set the temperatures back at 2 o'clock. The temperatures do gradually climb, but they only climb maybe 2 degrees an hour. So by the time the kids are getting out, maybe somebody notices it's getting a bit warm, but we've already participated, and now the school is emptying, and we don't have to worry about it. There is a winter period as well, demand response. And it's when the blizzard comes through and it's cold and it's icy and TVA is going to use the most electricity for heating in the valley. Well, what do we not do in the Tennessee Valley when it's cold and icy and has a blizzard come through? We don't go to school. Exactly. We don't go to school. We've never had a winter event called while we've been in school. We always have canceled it the night before or earlier in that week. And as a result, we respond dramatically. We shed all 400 kW of the school instead of just 25 kW. We're coming close to the end. I didn't know that we're going a bit over probably, but performance contracting I want to touch on. Chuck Burnett is here. He's from Train. That's our performance contractor. He's the M&B engineer that I argue with about savings. We're the ones that talk about what Train has got for us and what we've done for ourselves. But this is an example of what you need to really do something well in school. You have to have good controls for the HVAC. Most of the energy used in your school is going to be on heating and cooling. And then the next comes lighting, and then comes plug loads. And most is going to be used on heating and cooling. And unless you're setting that stuff back at night, setting that back in the summer, you're going to be wasting most of that energy, or a lot of that energy. So we have good control systems going into these schools through our performance contract, and that's what's going to save us most of our money for the next 30 years. In terms of performance contracting, you're paying for it yourself. You're paying for it out of savings, but you do have to get a bond to cover that construction cost initially. Last year when I gave this presentation, the numbers were 2.25%. Well, as we all know, the mortgage rates have increased a little bit, bond rates have increased a little bit. It's now 3.25% and gradually growing. The period of really good opportunities for projects, that window is closing. It's something that really by the end of this year, we need to make sure that we all close on any big deals that we have, because the chances are that those rates, those bond and lease rates are going to start inching up and inching up. Student education, I reach out to one other group that I'd like to talk about, and that's the Alliance to Save Energy. We do what's called the Energy Hog program, and that is the energy hog in the schools, and we expand this every year. And last year we got in front of 8,000 students by telling them things that they need to be looking out for in the schools. We've got 10 schools, or 15 schools, I guess, this year, where kids are actually putting tickets on teachers' doors if they're caught breaking the rules, if they're caught leaving lights on, leaving the projectors on, things like that. And it's getting the students involved that's going to give us the long-term savings. By the time we educate these elementary level students with this concept, they're going to get to high school and they're going to remember that. They're going to be looking out for those same things. So the Energy Hog is very efficient for us. It's very low cost for what we use it for, and it's fun. To have a giant pig walk around school every once in a while, or come to a football game, or get tackled at a basketball game, or something like that. It adds some excitement that is not always evident in the energy department. That's what my wife says, at least. I think energy is extraordinarily exciting.
Do you wear a suit?
No, I do not wear a suit. That's top secret information on who wears the suit. USGBC has a Green Apple Day of Service coming up, the end of September, and it can take place, up into October. There's no set final date. What we're going to be doing, we're going to this year be working with the state. The state has a program called the Green Edge program, I think it is. But we'll be contacting USGBC members asking for some volunteers for this. But basically, you have to have one person at a school that's willing to use one of those kilowatt meters, which is simply a plug-in meter that you put in the wall and then plug your load into to track how much it uses. And you just have to sign up to use that for a week and then to share your results, to get online and put your results in for that school, write down what kind of device it is that you had plugged in, and basically the operating hours. It's something that's very simple. It's something that they're having trouble getting people to participate in. They give you a free kilowatt meter to do this. You don't have to send it back once it's done. We've got 10 schools in Knox County signed up to do this already. Many of us have schools that our students go to, our children go to, or friends that we go to that could do that, that could sign up at school very easily. So we think this is what we're going to do this year for the East Tennessee chapter's Green Apple Day of Service. More information will be sent out through the website and contact about this soon. But like I said, we don't have to finish this up by September 29th or 27th. We're going to stretch it into mid to late October in order to get this exposed to the most students possible, or the most schools possible in East Tennessee. Oh my goodness, what a way that was actually a very beautiful chart. And I've used it for a number of years, but that is not going to work. Let me just go ahead and open the floor up for questions and comments. Yes, sir.
In my world, the more efficient your building gets, the better the air quality. Have you been tracking absenteeism at all in these schools in regards to the more efficient they get, the less sick days?
No, I have not. We do have in Knox County our own environmental department that deals more with the air quality issues. That is a good idea. That's something that would help us a lot, because we get called to depositions regularly about air quality in schools and asking how we run the control system, how the control systems run the equipment and things like that. And that is something that, especially on the long term, if it shows the decline that it should be showing, would help us.
There is a correlation. ASHRAE has documented some of that. Some of the building science magazines. There's a school in New Jersey, for instance, that tracked it, and they've got, they reduced absenteeism by, large percentage. All the things that benefit. You're saving money, you can buy more books, and all those other things, but it'd be a good number to have.
Well, it certainly would. Part of that comes to the fact that the job description, and I am not the sustainability manager. A lot of times people come to me with a lot of great ideas related to recycling or things like that. But we all have to focus a little bit. They've hired me to focus on the energy, and that's what I try to focus on, and only branch out, if there's the opportunity. But I'll take that back to our environmental chief, and I think it's something that he's going to want to track.
When attendance rates go up, don't they get more money from the state, etc.?
Yeah. The BEP formula is based on average daily attendance, so that would have a positive financial impact, that's for sure. Yes, John.
Excellent presentation, but I have to take issue with one comment that you made, and I think that was in the direction that solar energy is not free. Done right, in fact, it is free, and not only that, it can guarantee the schools revenue or savings. And for example, you can contact Hawkins County, where all the TVA served schools have solar on them now. And over 20 years, they are guaranteed just shy of $1 million. And they haven't invested a nickel yet.
I'm glad that you commented on that. I was hoping that you would. As soon as I made my throwaway comment, I thought there's something for John to say after. Solar energy, in the long term right now, it does pay, and it does show savings. We have gotten, through Knox County, many vendors come to us, and they're getting to the point where the savings are starting to be guaranteed, which is something we didn't have before. And that's kind of a sticking point in Knox County. We'll do projects, but we want the risk to be off of our backs and onto somebody else's back. That's why we do the performance contract with Train. We could do a lot of these things. We know how to install controls and put in energy efficient equipment. However, we're not going to spend $70 million of our own money without the guarantee of a third party that we are going to get those savings back. Solar is getting to that point, and as soon as we can get to the point where it's a guaranteed savings, we're more than likely to pull the trigger on it. And like I said, I've been to the Hawkins County jobs, and they look outstanding, and their work functioning very well. There's jobs in several different counties in Tennessee now. Cumberland County, I think, has, Campbell County, I think, has solar installed. It's working very well. So it's certainly something that is much more attractive than it was in the past. Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Yes, Lisa.
Is there data or information that you could share that would be relevant to smaller private sector jobs that would show the value of commissioning when you don't have long-term commissioning, but you would just for the initial?
In terms of percentages, I think that you can look at what I showed at Gibbs Elementary and really downsize that to almost anything you can do a residential scale in a lot of cases. What we find there are not things that are very technical that were left undone. It's just very simple stuff. Programmable thermostats that many homeowners or many small business owners don't pay attention to, that they assume were programmed on day one that don't get programmed. Things like that, outdoor air dampers, and a lot of times you bring your mechanical contractor in and everybody's rush, let's get that in. What percentage do you think, Chuck, of our outdoor air dampers work when we go to a school for the first time?
Not very high percentage.
You might be talking, you got 10 fingers, I don't need one hand in a lot of cases. I know a lot of counties where there's not a single outdoor air damper that's functioning. Not because they were broken from day one, but because they've been nailed closed. But that's another story. Our problem is when things don't function because they weren't commissioned. And there's nothing more important I can think to save money from day one is the first commissioning and then continuous commissioning. And continuous commissioning is inexpensive. Even if you have to get a third party to come in every year, every couple of years to make sure things are running, compared to the cost of that energy, it's a smart thing to do. All right, well, lunch is over. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.